Okay, Michael J. with the opinion. Now, folks, the hits just keep coming. So, after the debates, didn't take long for Pierre Poilievre to revert back to the Pierre Poilievre Maple Mega North. You got it. Pierre Poilievre Maple Mega North. First it was Axe the Tax, carbon tax Trudeau. Trudeau left, and then it was carbon tax Carney. Now Trudeau's gone, carbon tax is gone, the consumer carbon tax is gone, zero rated, out of session, so you cannot legislate it right out, but it's not active. And it's not going to be active for a while, no matter what everybody says it is, because it's just too divisive at the moment. Now, I don't know what it was. Yesterday morning, Pierre Poilievre must have woke up. It's the liberal plastics ban. So plastic bags, single-use plastics, which have been, being phased out for a while, which is a good thing, because you wouldn't realize how many cruise ship size loads of single-use plastics get thrown in your landfills every year. So Pierre Poilievre has reverted back to Donald Trump Jr., Mega Maple North. Axe the liberal food tax is what he's saying now. Now, you say, you're just fear-mongering. Well, I knew in 2015 when Donald Trump was looking to get elected first time as president. I explained back then, Paul Manafort, his campaign manager, guy's connected with the Russians. As a matter of fact, he put a puppet in to be president of Ukraine for a certain period of time for the Russians. Everybody said, nah. Same MO, modus operandus. Pierre Poilievre, the way he's conducted himself in the House of Commons, the President of the States, they don't have to do that. So they just have the rallies. But the rallies are very similar. Pierre Poilievre's rallies, where he does these photo ops where he stands behind a lectern, and then it's Canada First. Now, probably one of the most illustrious prime ministers Canada had was a Liberal minister, Sir Wilfrid Laurier. He said Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. So in pure Pierre Poilievre fashion, he just is a chameleon, pulls out the Canada first thing. And then if you talk to another historian, you go back, there was a nationalist party in the 1800s, Canada first. And if you really want to, that's a really dangerous rope, white supremacist rope you don't want to go under or down. Nonetheless, back when Trump was pushing again for a second term, doing videos and doing material in alignment with a group in the States, Midas Touch. Ben, his brothers. Ben's actually an educated lawyer, professor at a university or college in California. So we're going to go to him. We're going to go center stage with Ben Marcellus, Midas Touch, so you can get an American's viewpoint, because the Americans tried what they could not to get Donald Trump Jr., Donald Trump Sr., Donald Trump Sr., Agent Orange, Agent Krasno. The guy that's part of the Russian hoax, that claims he wasn't part of the Russian hoax, but he was, because I witnessed the guy that put him in the fold. They were all laundering money. Dominican cartel, Colombian cartel, Mexican cartel, more drug money, and for the Russian oligarchs, because that was the period of time where Yeltsin was handing over to Putin. This is going back almost 3 decades. And this went on for a couple decades at least. Trump benefited greatly. But the thing about Trump, guy has such an ostentatious lifestyle that he has to keep robbing Paul to pay Peter, because he just spends too much. And the only way he does a deal is if the deal's slanted in his favor at all times. Usually to the point that the other parties get so frustrated, they end up trying to get out of those deals. And you've seen that with the Trump Tower in Panama. You've seen it with the Trump Tower in Toronto, Canada. And that's just a small smattering of instances. So let's go to Ben. Ben Masalas. Good old Ben. Okay, so he just posted this video earlier today, about 6 hours ago. And he brought Charlie Angus in as well.
Elbows up, Canada. Canada is furious, and Canada is having its voice heard. We're under 10 days from the big election in Canada. We had the big debate take place this past week, the first one in French, then a debate in English. And Canadians are letting the world know that they are the front lines of resistance to the Trump regime. And now it's kind of funny that like the media in America is first kind of picking it up right now. I saw this on CNBC. Canadian small businesses are taking Trump tariffs personally. You think we're also seeing the tourism numbers, not just in Canada, which have plummeted to almost like zero at this point with the boycott of all things American, boycott American products, boycott tourism. But Canada has set the example for the rest of the world. Those international tourism numbers have dropped as Donald Trump attacks our allies, now I guess former allies, based on how Trump's treated them. And also people don't want to end up in detention centers or concentration camps in El Salvador. Let's take
And this is no joke, kid. No joke, kids. In El Salvador. We had a guy that was legally, he actually was a landed immigrant at the beginning, so he wasn't totally legal at the beginning. But then he got a court order because he had to worry about I think it was Venezuela. It could have been El Salvador, I'm not sure. But he's got a family, got 3 kids in America. He's got a child with special needs. And since this Trump administration's taken to the streets, they picked him up with all sorts of other people. Never had a hearing, never had a chance in front of a judge. He also had a judge order not to be removed or dealt with because his case was before the courts to be a citizen of the States because there was a security of the person issue from the other country. So nonetheless, what do? They send him to jail in El Salvador. Finally goes through the courts. Supreme Court says, bring him back. And Trump's dragging his heels. And recently, just in the debate we had in Montreal, you had Mr. Pierre Poilievre, Maple Mega North, and that's why I say Maple Mega North, going to say he's going to use the notwithstanding clause. He's going to override the court system. The court system has always been separate from the political system. It was originally set up way, way back. Let's go back into the way back machine. You had the Queen at that time. And this is how it works. And no pun intended, this is really how it works. God spoke to the Queen. Queen gave direction to the legislators. Legislators formed law. Justice Department took care of the law. If the law was appropriately done, they allowed it to be in legislation. If it wasn't, and it was contested, then it was reverted back to be changed so that it conformed to law. But when you do a notwithstanding clause, it's never been done federally, never had to be done. It's been done by Doug Ford because he's cut corners because he can't do things properly and negotiate. It's been done in Saskatchewan. And it's been done in Quebec because they want their language laws. And then they wonder, here's the thing. Quebec thinks they're hard done by just like Alberta. And Quebec has had such hard language laws and enforced it upon the citizens and the corporates that the big corporations, which used to be head office right in Montreal for a long, long time, all left. And LeBlanc would state, well, it's the English Canada side of things. No, it's not. You did it. You got to be a little more accommodating, a little more flexible in Quebec. Alberta, same with you. Like, everybody can get their nose out of joint every once in a while, but come on. There's two things that you can use: thought and reason. Yikes. Thought and reason. Can you believe that? Amazing when you use that in a balanced manner.
Take a look at what went down in the debate between the leaders of the various parties in this election. You have Prime Minister Carney leading the Liberal Party, and Prime Minister Carney says the biggest risk to the Canada and the Canadian economy is Trump. Here, play this clip.
The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump. So first and foremost, we've got to get that right. Second,
to think about as an American in a Canadian debate that would be the biggest threat. That's where we are right now under the Trump regime. Here's what Carney said as well. Let's play the other clip.
we are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. Donald Trump is trying to fundamentally change the world economy, the trading system. But really what he's trying to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country. And we're all going to stand up against Donald Trump.
Let's be clear. These tariffs are under an emergency program. You know, a bylaw. You know, it's a bylaw. When, you know, your security of your country. So IEEE, International Emergency Protection Act. That's why he's doing the executive orders. Normally, tariffs have to go through Congress. But that's why the fentanyl is an issue. Now, don't get me wrong. Drugs are an issue. I'm not trying to downplay that. But in the bigger picture, on a pro rata basis throughout history and in the present, it's not as bad as it has been. Because understand one thing. Crystal meth was a problem over 50 years ago in Alberta, and more of a problem back then than it is now. So even crime in 1992 was a lot worse, many, many times worse than it is right now. But people, MAGA Maple North, which Donald Trump Jr. did, or Senior, sorry, Donald Trump Senior, scared the bejesus out of people using fear, worry, anxiety, triggered them all. Now he's in power, and what's he doing? He's using tariffs under an emergency act to extort his way with the rest of the world. And that's just the way it is. Number 2, Doge. Elon Mussolini, Donald J. Trump, they're gutting every institution. You know, the bigger the institution, the bigger the cracks. That's always been the case. That has to do with business as well. You always have to look at your costs and refine things. But you're seeing it being gutted in the States, and the effect is tragic. Because here's the thing. You've got a lot of civil servants. It's not an easy job. You think it's an easy job. And you hear about the deep state, and then you fall into that friggin' trap, conspiracy theory trap. But these civil servants work hard to provide a function to serve the people in your country. And every once in a while there's a bad apple. There's a bad apple everywhere. You buy a friggin' basket of apples at the supermarket, you're going to find a bad apple sometimes. So let's get over this BS, because you're hearing these platitudes and slogans, and it's brainwashing you. Affordability crisis, housing crisis. Carney, I did a video with Scott Galloway. Very, very good questions. They're answered. You should check my channel with Scott Galloway. If you want to know about any issue, Scott Galloway asked the right questions. Let's go back to the video. Back to the show we must go.
I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies. We will fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
So how do you think Maple MAGA is responding? Pierre Poilievre, who leads the Conservative Party in these federal elections, he was in Montreal on Friday. As Rachel Gilmore says, seems like Poliev is courting the turtle.
Oh, I mentioned Rachel Gilmore. She was the girl that was supposed to fact-check CTV. CTV, because of conservative partisan influence and people threatening CTV, called her up, and there's a recording of that call, so it is true, it is factual, that CTV was under pressure to not do any fact-checking on Pierre Poilievre. Also, Pierre Poilievre threatened Bell Media. Bell Media is a publicly traded company. Same actions, same acts that Donald Trump has been doing in the States. You know, he's exerting pressure on universities, Harvard, pulling funding if he can't get his way. His ideology is not satisfied. This is a dangerous rope? This is a dangerous trope, and it's a dangerous route to take because where does it stop? Notwithstanding clause. It's just nonsense. And so CTV is afraid to properly report because they did make a mistake, which was not in favor of Pierre Poilievre. There's no doubt about it. But he just kept at it and forced himself and actually affected the stock price because the people that follow MAGA in the States do the exact same thing. They threaten companies. They threaten senators and people with violence, etc., etc. It's not as bad up here yet, but it's not far behind. Not far behind because over 70% of the media out there is owned by American influence, far-right influence, and the only way you can work for them is if you've got a far-right position, and you have to push that position. You're all being brainwashed. And unless you filter, it's going into your PFC, prefrontal cortex, right through the left and right front lobes. And unless you consciously filter that, 95% of that time it's being stored in your subconscious and unconscious, and you're operating on autopilot and you just don't realize it because you've never studied your behavioral patterns enough to recognize it. Just saying, folks, that's where it's at. This is reality. Trust me on that.
Vote in Montreal today. This is what Maple MAGA is talking about. By the way, this is straight out of the Trump playbook, right? Remember when Trump was holding up like the groceries and Trump was like saying, they're going to go after the plastic straws. They're going after we're pro plastic straw, and made that like a centerpiece. Look at Poliev, the right-wing MAGA Maple guy from the Conservative Party. Play it.
How long does this bread stay fresh and edible if it's not packaged? You ever think of taking your bread out when you go home and just leave?
This was just yesterday. This is right the day after the debate. Axe the tax, carbon tax isn't working anymore. All these slogans. A little thing like axe the tax. And people fall for these tropes.
Eating it unwrapped, how many days do you think it would be good before it gets dried out and moldy? How long would the other fresh produce here stay edible if it could not be plastic wrapped? The answer is a lot less time.
It's like an exact image of how Trump ran the campaign. Let's bring in Resistance member Charlie Angus, former member of Parliament. You all know Charlie Angus. Charlie, before getting into the election, you and I haven't had a discussion on...
Yeah, I forgot to unmute there. Sorry. So Charlie Angus, no longer with the NDP, longtime NDP, out in the Midwest, Alberta area, wears his heart on his sleeve, very pragmatic guy, and he states his mind, calls it as he sees it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
The Midas Touch Network. In about 2 weeks, you've been busy with the Resistance Elbows Up tour, and you've been going area to area. So tell us, though, what's going on in Canada? What's the sentiment?
Well, Ben, I've been traveling across the country, and you are right in terms of people's determination to resist, whether it's, working class Northern Ontario, whether it's chill Vancouver Island, whether it's in the heart of Alberta, which is supposed to be mega Maple Central, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming out, people ready to defend their country, people ready to stand up to Trump, but also people who are really understanding that this is about the future of the rule of law and the future of democracy. And so there's a real determination right now. People are employing the boycott full out. They're watching what's happening with people being snatched off the streets in the United States, the attacks on universities. And it's very concerning. And then it's what the kind of language we're actually seeing now from the MAGA Maple crowd of Pierre Poilievre are repeating so many of the dog whistles that drove the Trump campaign, and what we're seeing right now being played out in Project 2025. This is something the conservatives are running on. So I'm expecting a huge turnout. We've got the advanced polls are happening right now. So the week before the election, people can vote on the weekend before. The lineups are around the block. That's usually a sign that a government's being turfed out, or that Canadians are not going to let MAGA Maple get control here because of what we've seen in the United States.
What do you make of Trump's recent behavior? Now, you and I have been talking about this for several months. The first time Trump announced the tariffs many, many months ago, and then withdrew it, and then paused it, and continued his rhetoric about 51st state annexation. I mean, just this past week, Donald Trump's chief propagandist, Caroline Leavitt, again used annexation, conquest language about Canada. Then Trump tariffed the world, and then he paused some, but then he kept the 25% on, which he's saying is a fentanyl tariff and a this and a that. And I'm not even sure they can keep track of what they're even doing. But what do you make of the recent behavior?
I think what's really concerning is that an idiot like Trump has been allowed to monkey wrench the global economy without anybody stepping in and saying, whoa, Donald, what the heck are you doing? When we see him tariffing poor Madagascar because Madagascar doesn't buy enough product from the United States. Madagascar is too poor to buy product from the United States, but they offer Americans cheap chocolates. Donald Trump picks a fight with them. The on again, off again tariffs in terms of auto, nobody even knows where that stands. Right now, South Dakota is freaking out, North Dakota, the farmers in Montana, because you have an integrated border in terms of ag trade, $70 billion. All that's in chaos right now. I think he's pushing us towards a major, definitely an American recession, probably a global recession, and maybe a depression if he doesn't step back. But it's up and down. And the thing that really strikes me about Trump and his crew is they're really, really tough until you stand up to them, and then they blink. And that's certainly what's happened with Canada, and Canada's been very strong. And then they come back at it a second and a third time. The feeling I'm getting from Canadians is they don't care what Trump does next. We're going to do what we're going to do. We're looking to rebuild our economy, and we're going to do it without our former ally, our former friend, our former partner. We're going to have to take steps that we're going to take because we simply cannot trust the American regime anymore.
And look, the Maple MAGA crew led by Pierre Poilievre, I mean, I showed the language there about, plastic straws, plastic bags, but, which, by the way, is just insane. But then you move towards some of the other things that they've been talking about, planning to suspend the rule of law, the same types of ideas of disappearing students, and
notwithstanding clause,
and promoting a Doge version in the North, basically, huh?
What's really surprising, I mean, the usual rule of thumb for conservative candidates and campaigns in Canada is as the campaign moves on, you move more to the center, you quieten down your crazy base, and you try and appeal to, the independent, non-aligned voter. But Pierre Poilievre isn't doing that because that's not MAGA, and that's not what the fascist playbook is. The fascist playbook is to say boldly what you're going to do. So we see after the horrific disappearances and deportations of Americans to El Salvador, Pierre Poilievre bragging that he's going to invoke what we have in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and notwithstanding clause that in certain circumstances allows government to overrule the rule of law. It was supposed to be an emergency measure in case a legal decision overstepped bounds in terms of democratic rights. He's saying he's going to invoke this to take away the rights of his so-called criminal class. But when you have a prime minister, a guy running to be prime minister, saying he's going to overrule the courts arbitrarily when he feels he wants to, you are then in the same situation of people being illegally deported to El Salvador. He's now saying, after we've seen these students kidnapped and carried, thousands of miles away from home to be deported for for protesting, Pierre Poilievre saying he's going to invoke the same thing. And of course, they use the same language. It's about free speech. Free speech means subservience to Trump, subservience to MAGA Maple, and everyone else are going to be challenged. And then the really disturbing element is what we've seen with the disaster of Doge. Well, a former chief of staff to Prime Minister Stephen Harper, the conservative godfather, was bragging that Pierre Poilievre, if elected, would go quickly after Canada's independent civil service, and that it would be much easier to implement Doge here. We don't have the checks and balances, apparently, that the United States has, so it would be even easier. And I think what the listeners or the viewers are understanding is that once you crush the independent civil service, you crush a functioning democracy. This is what Pierre Poilievre is bringing forward to the Canadian people, along with his idiocy about bread and plastic bags. I think Canadians understand if you elect this guy, you are electing the fascist regime that is the same of MAGA, and you are going to turn Canada over to the Trump agenda.
We know the Trump regime watches these podcasts. They watch our interviews, and they're not too pleased when we have you on. What's your message right now to Donald Trump if he's watching this?
Well, Donald Trump, I'm going to say this once, and I might never say it again. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for bringing Canada together. It took such a malignant, narcissistic slug like you to make us put aside all of our differences, all our regional fights, all of our concerns with each other, and realize that we actually had to stand up for something better, which is standing up for the rule of law, standing up for democracy, standing up for decency. And we know that we're on your border, and it freaks you out because you and your incel gang are so freaked out about diversity, equity, inclusion, your DEI nightmare. Well, we are your DEI nightmare, Donald, because Canada is always going to be a country of diversity. We will always be a country of equity. We will always be a country of inclusion, and we will defend the rule of law. And if you want to continue fighting with us, you are going to lose at the end of the day. I'm not saying it's not going to hurt us, but we are true. We are North. We are strong. We are free, and we are ready for this fight, Donald. So make up your mind. Quit your fighting on social media with us. Tell us what you're going to do, because we're moving on and we're going to stand and hold the line.
Resistance member Charlie Angus. Charlie, we've loved following your Resistance Elbows Up tour. We've been featuring it here on the network, so we look forward to seeing some more.
Very well there,
You will
Charlie.
see it very soon. Elbows up.
Elbows up.
There you go, folks. This is the real issue. Do you want to be like the United States? You've seen what's happened. You've seen exactly what's happened in the United States. That's a perfect example of what route we're taking here. And you've seen it even at the debate, when you had so-called independent news actually disrupting the affairs of the media where they're stationed, to the degree that the scrum on the last night after that was finished, couldn't have a scrum. The journalists weren't able to do one-on-one questions with all the debaters, whether it be Singh, LeBlanc, Poliev, Carney. They weren't able to do it because independent news was not independent news. It was partisan news, and they disrupt. They don't respect the rule of law. They don't respect other people doing what they need to be doing. They don't conduct their affairs to a modicum of civility, and that's what happens. That's what happens, folks. Now, I want to bring to your attention a very interesting thing. You say a very interesting thing? Yes, a very interesting thing. And it has to do with the packaging. Well, first and foremost, like you've seen Pierre Poilievre talking about the plastics. Let's just look at this here. You can look at this right
are
here.
overwhelmed.
Right now.
2 million people are lined up every month. That's a 100% increase in the lost Liberal decade at our food banks. Families are forced to make impossible choices. And instead of helping, Liberals are again making life even harder with their out-of-touch, ideologically driven policies that raise the cost of everything at the worst possible time. They want to tell you what products you can use, what containers your food comes in, what labels are on your goods at grocery stores. And it's not just...
So this is part of the free markets, minimizing government, deregulation. So we're going to deregulate to the point. Do you remember Walkerton? Because of the conservative provincial government decided they're going to cut. Goes back to this Mike Harris again. Back to Mike Harris. Walkerton, people died because any oversight to make sure it was safe for the citizens was cut back. Got to cut. And this is the way they do it. You got 43 million people in Canada now. You've got more people. You actually think that maybe you need more help when you have more people to deal with? Or do you think you cut everything way back? Doesn't make sense. If a husband and wife has got one kid, they have a certain amount of responsibility. They got 3 kids, got a lot more responsibility. They got 6 kids, more responsibility. They got 10 kids. Nobody can afford to have 10 kids anymore. But do you imagine the responsibility? The cost? It's unbelievable. So anyways, here you have Axe the tax. Oh, it's Axe the liberal food packaging tax. That's what that is. Meanwhile, scope of the regulation. This is single-use cutlery. This is from Canada.ca. This is the actual regulations. And right now, in which we started, I think in 2023, checkout bags. So now you're using recyclable bags. Very smart thing to do. Single-use plastics. The worst thing to the landfill sites. And it's the worst thing to the health of a human being. Because you know what? A lot of those plastics are in your body and you don't realize it. And this is science. This is not a joke. You may think it's a joke, but no, it's not a joke. And this is the scope of this is what it is right now. Now he's scaring you about plastic bags around the loaves of breads and the bulk packaging. That stuff's not for a few years. And to say you can cost it out, why don't you end up letting the scientists work on getting biodegradable plastics? Because that'd be a game changer. And do you imagine once you get the plastics and the toxicity out of the environment, how much easier it'll be on the healthcare system? There you go. Here it is, coming into force. Checkout bag, cutlery, food service, sticks, straws, stir sticks, ring carriers. They get wrapped around turtles' necks and all sorts of seafood that you eat. Flexible straws. It gets into your food systems. You're putting that into your bodies. And there's the time guidelines. So that's what the time guidelines are. Are you packaging probleming single-use plastics? You know, there's groups that deal with it. Put the links in the description so you can check that out. And deal with some factual evidence, facts that's going on. Now here, one day ago, this was put out by Pierre Poilievre. And the title is Reversing the Liberal Ban on Plastic Wrapping and Containers. Well,
Canadians are living through a cost of living crisis. We feel it every time we go to the grocery store.
Oh, another thing. Cost of living crisis. You know what? Yeah, food banks have been a great help, but they're stressed out. They're just overused. But the affordability problem is not exclusive to Canada. It's in the United States. It's in Europe. It's around the world. Inflation became an issue because of the pandemic. People got money from the government to live, so they could live, buy groceries, etc., etc. And at the whole time that was happening, there was no GDP. Business came to a grinding halt. And that's where inflation comes into play. Inflation comes into play when government's putting out money and the country's not producing any gross domestic product. That's the bottom line. Balanced budgets, you got to be careful with that too. Because I'm going to tell you something. 2 balanced budgets in the United States, Coolidge and Bill Clinton. After each one of them balanced their budgets, maybe even had a surplus, each one of those countries went into a disastrous recession. And why is that, you say? Well, because when government budget's different from a personal home budget and your business budget. And you'll say, what? How's that possible? Well, there's zero-sum economics. There's a different way that it works within the economy. macroeconomic factors are different from the microeconomic factors. That's why they call them macroeconomic factors and why they call them microeconomic factors. But I'm just going to wrap it up in a tight little package for you. When you balance the budget, you create surpluses, what happens is the banks put out more private money. And so you're going to hear it referred to as private lenders. And it's banks. That's banks, mortgage brokers, and other third-tier, tertiary lenders. And what happens? They take more risk. Government doesn't take as much risk. These are the statistics. History has proven that. Just wanted you to know that, folks. So here we've got the fear of God being rammed down your throat. It's a worldwide problem, not exclusive to Canada.
Canadians are living through a cost of living crisis. We feel it every time we go to the grocery store. But after a lost Liberal decade, families are going to spend...
And then a lost Liberal decade, which is so full of crap. And you buy it, you the people buy into this stuff. 2015, Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre handed over a recession to a young fellow at that time, wet behind the ears, Justin Trudeau. Within 3.5 years, you had a pandemic, the worst pandemic in 100 years. Business ground to a halt, but people got money still to live on, which was great. Supply chain issues only have recently started coming back to a respectable level. And here we are, end of the first quarter 2025, and it's taken that long. From December 19th, 2019 to the fourth quarter 2025. So what happens when you have supply chain problems all that time? You got inflationary spikes. And it's going to affect the cost of food. And guess one other thing that has been historically consistent. The cost of groceries go up. Guess what? No matter what any politician tells you, none of them can bring the cost of groceries down. Doesn't happen. Donald Trump got elected on that. Guess what? Cost of groceries has not gone down, just kept going up. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse because he's creating a recession for the United States, possible recession for the rest of the world, and a possible depression worldwide because the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of 1929 caused the Great Depression. That's history for you. So back to what Pierre Poilievre's website and his party's pushing right here. Oh, the average Canadian family of four is expected to spend $800 more on groceries this year. Expected. Not proven, just expected.
And $800 more on food this year than they did last year. Things have gotten so bad that food banks across Canada had to handle a record 2 million visits in a single month last year. In Montreal, 44% of CEGEP students suffer from food insecurity. Food prices are still skyrocketing upwards, too, surging by 3.2% over the last year. And in the last month alone, food inflation increased by nearly 2%, the largest monthly jump in decades. And in Canada, we have food insecurity emergencies that have been declared in towns and cities across the country. After 3 Liberal terms that...
No, those food insecurity declarations come from independent food banks. Not municipal declared emergencies, not provincial declared emergencies. Okay? Let's stick with the facts here because people loosely portray this to just create fear, worry, and anxiety in you. That's how they get you. They create the problem. They say they got the solution. You buy into it and you find out you got sold a bag of bad goods, and after 4 years you can't do anything until at the end of the 4 years. And that's too late. You wasted 4 years. Do that 3 times, there's 12 years because tax cuts help nobody. Not the bottom people that really need help with affordability. It just helps them get by month to month, but it really helps the people that are making the big bucks. And that's why we're in this problem to this day, because the fiat economy construct is structured in such a way and has been utilized in such a way to be able to get favor, to get the political party in position. And it's been a known way for conservatives for the last 100 years. And this is where the deficits come into play.
Have increased taxes, inflated prices, and drove your wages down. This is life in Canada after a lost Liberal decade. But Mark Carney, he isn't listening.
Who's ready to stand up for me?
Yeah, Mark Carney is listening. You can check my channel. I posted a video with Scott Gilmore. Asked some very, very important questions. You're going to get some good answers, and you can check it out for yourself. And do your research. Nobody can tell you who to vote for. You buy into these slogans, tropes, platitudes. Sounds good. Strikes the fear of God in you. Makes you feel that they got the answer to solve the problem, but they haven't. Build Canada project under Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre. Where'd it go? They didn't even do half of what they said they were going to do. And they were in power for 10 years. Imagine that, eh?
Help me.
He plans to make your life even more expensive in a fourth Liberal term. Mark Carney's Liberals have already banned the plastics that Canadians use every single day.
This week, the federal court decided to overturn the government's single-use plastic ban, deeming it unconstitutional. Now, on one hand, it's disappointment for some environmentalists and climate change activists. On the other, provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan see it as a success in protecting thousands of jobs and billions of dollars worth of investment in plastic manufacturing. Now, questions are being raised about whether things like bags, straws, and takeout containers listed under that ban could make a comeback. For more on this recent development and where that leaves Canadians today, environmental professor Miriam Diamond joins us. Welcome to Global News, Miriam.
Thank you very much, Jaden.
This overturn, how much of an impact is that going to have on the environment? Was this single-use plastic ban making a difference in Canada?
Well, let's distinguish two things. First of all, the overturn of the court decision, we don't yet know what the implications will be. The ban that's coming through on single-use plastics has already received royal assent. It's in place, and it is a graduated three-part bill so that progressively different items will be restricted. It's unclear whether the court decision will overturn that because that's already a regulation. But what it does do is that it ties up the courts, it uses taxpayers' money to fight this, and it emboldens the industry to further challenge environmental restrictions. You mentioned at the offset that it's almost pitting environmental activists against the chemical industry, the plastics industry. I'm an environmental scientist. I'm not an activist, I'm a scientist. The science tells me that we cannot keep producing and consuming plastics. That's the science. It's not just a matter of activism. As I speak to you today, every one of us, you, myself, every one of us has plastics in us. The plastics come in our drinking water, in our food. Every fish in the Great Lakes has plastics. This is a result of the unsustainable production of plastics, and it's just impossible to manage that many plastics. The federal government, in my opinion, wisely focused on reducing single-use plastics in the beverage and food industry. And why? Because they are very difficult, if not impossible, to recycle right now. They're just very limited recycling. And secondly, they constitute a very large fraction of plastic waste. So hopefully this court ruling will not result in an overturning of those regulations.
So what happens now? I mean, we know Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault says he's strongly considering an appeal to overturn this. But if the feds are unsuccessful in their appeal, what does the future in general of single-use plastics look like in Canada? Some major grocers say they won't be bringing back bags, but as you've mentioned, this goes far beyond that.
Well, the writing's on the wall that we cannot continue to use single-use plastics because they are not recyclable. And because so much of those single-use plastics end up as litter, which break down into smaller particles that eventually end up in us. So the writing's on the wall. We have to stop using so many plastics. We have to find better alternatives. The court ruling does not prevent the government from restricting single-use plastics and other plastics. The government will have to find other instruments, but it will be more difficult and more cumbersome.
And we'll continue to follow it. We'll have to leave it there. Professor Miriam Diamond joining us today. Thank you so much for this.
So there you go, folks.
This week, the federal court...
You're getting the goods. That is science. It's not friggin' platitudes and slogans. That is actual science. What are you going to wait till you friggin' drop dead because of plastic toxicity? What about your children? Do you not care? Already it's a point where it's not good for anybody. Now you're going to save a buck? You're not going to save enough. Your health is priceless. Don't kid yourself. Your health is priceless. Absolutely priceless. And what are you going to do? Let's go back to Axe the Tax. Conservative page. I'm going to quickly wrap this up soon because we're wasting it's just too much time. And this really, you got to deal with scientific fact. Mega Maple North. Mr. Poliev. Now the new labeling and packaging requirements, that's in steps up to 2030. It's only 2025 right now. He's already striking, this is just another fear-based platitude to create anxiety and worry that it's going to cost you more. What do you want to do? Do you want to save 20 bucks a month? If that, what's your health worth? Once your health starts going, you got no productivity, you got no income. Who's going to be there for you? Conservatives during the pandemic, after the first round of financing to help Canadians, pulled their support. Could have been a lot worse back then. Fortunately, the NDP stepped up and supported the government. People got by. So you forget about all this stuff, don't you? Life is difficult. Life is a cabaret, my friend. Look at this here. Now, let's go further down the rope because single-use plastics was the initial thing. Now, this is stuff that's being phased in over time. It's in a consultation process. The consultation process. This is the Canada government site in 2023, April 2023. They published a regulatory framework paper, Opportunities for Reuse, the Circular Economy and Plastic Food Packaging. You're being scared to death about this right now with Pierre Poilievre, with stuff that's not even going to be here for another few years, for the most part. It's gradually being brought in. And here's the other thing. If it's a business under $5 million a year, and a lot of small businesses are under $5 million a year in revenue, if you're under $5 million a year in revenue, you're exempt from these provisions right now, even up to and including 2030. And here, we are preparing or proposing to capture any person or class of persons who between the date of publication of the final notice and December 31, 2035. Now understand this is for the larger retailers. What's that? Retail sales in Canada over $4 billion annually, including in-store and online sales in current dollars. Wow. So you people on the street that vote, it's $4 billion. You don't do $4 billion in annual revenue, do you? You got a salary of $50,000, maybe $100,000. If you got $50,000, $100,000, you're doing better than a lot of other people. Objective targets, risk management. Objective 1, target 2035. Now here's the real gist of things. You're being scared to the holy crap out of you right now. Target date's 2035. Objective 2, fresh fruits and vegetables, distributed and sold in bulk or in plastic-free packaging, 75% by 2026. That's the target. 95% by 2028. Objective 3, all primary food plastic packaging is reusable, compostable, 100% by 2028. So, develop strategies outside of fresh produce. Targets 20% by 2026, 50% by 2030, 60% by 2035. It's tiered. And the guy's trying to scare the crap out of you. Like, what the heck? Maple Mega North. He's doing a Donald Trump on you. You got to learn, just based on what's happened down south of the border, Trump's going nowhere. This is a problem for a while. This is a big problem for a while. There you go. So there we go. That's it. We're going to cut out now. You're going to cut out now? Yeah, I'm going to cut out now. It's just too much friggin'. It's nonsense. Just too much. There's just so much crap that you got to cover. And then you've got these partisan conservative pundits, Juno News, Rebel News, Elevate Podcasts, Moose on the Loose. They're not going to help you. They just want you to get on the Mega North, Maple Mega North. If you haven't learned anything from what's happening down in the States and Donald J. Trump, you see the same patterns happening up here. They happened in Europe. Europe just got by without it affecting them. Germany, France, Orban in Hungary, though, he's got a strong fascist movement. If you're not scared by what Trump's going to do to Canada, because he's coming up here, he's after us. We need to pivot, and we can't get caught up in wasting time trying to deal with him. We've got ministers and cabinet ministers and different departments that can deal with his people to see what we can work out on some of the things to maybe do some business. But right now, we got to focus on a growth-first strategy. And you start going down this friggin' rabbit hole of single-use plastics, it's biting you. It's going to bite you much harder than it already is. It's your nerve centers are close to the skin. And when anything internally is at a minimalistic point in its cycle, you're okay, you don't feel it. But when it gets advanced, you start feeling it because of the way the nerves are structured throughout the body. The plastics, you're already dealing with toxicity in your body with plastics. We need to be very careful. That's where Quebec's good about the environment. You got to give them credit. Give them credit. So love and peace to everybody. Let anxiety go. Take care. Questions, comments, throw in the chat comment section. And once again, love and peace to y'all. Take care. Talk to you again soon. Ciao for now.